What kind of person demands payment in the dead of night, pounding on doors like a debt collector from hell? In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where porch lights glowed softly and crickets sang, a Karen was that person. At 11:47 p.m. Her heavy footsteps echoed down Maple Lane, her silhouette looming under the streetlights. She was a force large, loud, and unyielding, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association. Her mission tonight: to collect overdue HOA dues from the Wilsons, a young couple barely scraping by. Her fists slammed against their door, each thud a declaration of war. Inside, Sarah Wilson clutched her husband Tom's arm, their toddler asleep upstairs, unaware of the storm brewing below. "Open the damn door." Hoa's voice was a blade, sharp and unrelenting. "You owe $237.50, and I'm not leaving until it's paid." Sarah's heart raced. They didn't have the money, not after Tom's hours were cut at the factory. But HOA didn't care about excuses. She never did. The Wilsons had moved to Willow Creek for a fresh start, drawn by its promise of community and safety. They'd stretched every penny to buy their fixer-upper, a small house with peeling paint but big dreams. HOA, however, saw their struggle as weakness. To her, unpaid dues were a personal insult, a crack in the perfect facade she demanded of the neighborhood. She'd sent letters, left voicemails, even posted notices on their mailbox, each one more threatening than the last. Tonight, though, she'd escalated. "You think you can hide?" she shouted, her voice carrying to the neighbors' houses, where curtains twitched and lights flickered on. Tom cracked the door open, his face pale but defiant. "We're doing our best, Karen. We'll pay when we can." Her eyes narrowed, lips curling into a sneer. "Your best isn't good enough. Pay now, or I'll make sure everyone knows you're deadbeats." Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "You can't just show up like this. It's harassment." HOA laughed, a cold, barking sound that sent chills down Sarah's spine. "Harassment? I'm protecting this neighborhood from people like you." The tension crackled like a live wire. Across the street, old Mr. Jenkins peeked out, his phone already in hand, whispering to his wife about calling the police. Next door, Maria Lopez, a single mom who'd clashed with HOA before, stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. HOA didn't notice the gathering eyes. She was too busy reveling in her power, her voice rising as she listed every infraction she'd pinned on the Wilsonson mowed grass. An unapproved mailbox, a car parked an inch too far from the curb. Then came the twist no one saw coming. Maria, usually quiet and reserved, stepped off her porch and into the fray. "Karen, you're the one breaking rules," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She held up her phone, the screen glowing with a video. It was grainy but unmistakable Hoa, caught on Maria's doorbell camera, slipping a threatening note under the Wilsons' door last week. Her face twisted with malice. "This isn't about dues," Maria continued, her voice growing bolder. "You've been targeting them for months. I've got proof." Hoa's face froze, her confidence cracking like thin ice. The neighbors murmured, their whispers a growing tide. Sarah's eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting. Tom gripped the doorframe, his knuckles white. Hoa's mouth opened, then closed, her usual venom replaced by stunned silence. Maria's video wasn't just a revelation. It was a spark. The neighborhood had whispered about Hoas' reign of terror for years, her fines, her rules, her relentless need for control. But no one had dared challenge her. Maria's courage changed that. Mr. Jenkins shuffled forward, his voice shaky but clear. She tried to find me for my rose bushes last month. Said they were too red. Ridiculous. Another neighbor, a quiet man named Carl, chimed in. She threatened to tow my truck because it had a scratch. A scratch. The tide was turning, and HOA felt it. Her eyes darted from face to face, searching for an ally, but found none. You're all ungrateful, she snapped, her voice losing its edge. I keep this place perfect. But the crowd wasn't listening. They were done with her perfection, done with her tyranny. The standoff reached its peak as red and blue lights flashed at the end of the street. A police cruiser rolled up, slow and deliberate, cutting through the night. Hoas' bravado faltered as two officers stepped out, their faces unreadable. Sarah, emboldened by Maria's stand, spoke up. She's been harassing us for months, threatening us, showing up at all hours. We have proof. Maria handed her phone to the taller officer, who watched the video in silence. Hoas' face flushed crimson, her hands balling into fists. This is outrageous. She spat. I'm the victim here. They're the ones breaking the rules. But the officer's gaze was steady, unmoved by her theatrics. Ma'am, we've had multiple calls about you tonight, he said, his tone calm but firm. We need to talk. Hoas' world began to unravel. The neighbors, once cowed by her presence, now stood united, their voices a chorus of grievances. The officers listened, jotting notes as Maria, Sarah, and others recounted Hoas' abuses, fines for petty infractions, threats over minor disputes, even rumors she'd pocketed HOA funds for personal use. HOA tried to interrupt, her voice shrill, but the officers raised a hand, silencing her. You'll get your turn, the second officer said, her tone leaving no room for argument. The crowd grew, more neighbors stepping out, drawn by the lights and the drama. HOA, who'd thrived on fear, now faced a reckoning. Her empire of rules and intimidation was crumbling, and she could feel it slipping through her fingers. The officers' questions grew sharper, their flashlights casting stark beams across Hoas' defiant face. She tried to spin the narrative, claiming she was only enforcing the rules, protecting property values. But the evidence was damning. Maria's video wasn't the only one. Carl had footage of HOA tampering with his mailbox. And Mr. Jenkins had saved every threatening letter she'd sent. The officers exchanged a glance, their patience thinning. Ma'am, you're coming with us to the station, the taller officer said, gesturing toward the cruiser. Hoas' eyes widened, her voice rising to a screech. You can't do this. I'm the president of the HOA. But the officer was unmoved, guiding her firmly toward the car. The neighbors watched, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over them as HOA, still shouting, was ushered into the back seat. The cruiser's door slammed shut, muffling her protests, and the red and blue lights faded into the night as it drove away. The street fell silent, the weight of Hoas' absence settling over Willow Creek like a lifted curse. Sarah leaned into Tom, tears of relief streaming down her face. Maria stood nearby, her phone still in hand, a quiet strength radiating from her. The neighbors lingered, their shared victory forging a bond none had expected. But the story didn't end with Hoas' departure. In the days that followed, The neighborhood learned the truth about her reign. An audit, prompted by Carl's suspicions, revealed she'd been skimming HOA funds for years, funneling thousands into her own accounts. The discovery was a gut punch, but it also lit a fire. The residents, once divided by fear, came together. They voted out the old HOA board, electing Maria as president. She promised transparency, fairness, and a community that worked for everyone, not just one woman's ego. Sarah and Tom, freed from HOA's shadow, began to rebuild. They paid their dues in small installments, and no one batted an eye. The neighborhood rallied around them, offering meals, babysitting, even help fixing their peeling paint. Mr. Jenkins' rose bushes bloomed brighter, no longer too red. Carl's scratch truck stayed proudly parked. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was healing, growing into the community the Wilsons had dreamed of when they'd first arrived. Maria, once a quiet observer, became the heart of it all, her courage inspiring others to speak up, to care, to connect. The night HOA rode away in that cruiser wasn't just an end, it was a beginning. Years later, Maple Lane looked different. The houses were brighter, the lawns less rigid, the air filled with laughter instead of tension. Sarah would tell her toddler, now a curious 6-year-old, about the night the neighborhood stood up to a bully. Sometimes, she'd say, it takes one brave person to change everything. Maria would smile, overhearing, and add, and sometimes, it takes all of us together. The story of HOA Karen became a legend in Willow Creek, a reminder that no one's power is absolute, and no one's voice is too small. When the sun set over the street, casting long shadows and warm light, it felt like a promise. A community could falter, but it could also rise, stronger than before. End.